into a promised land flowing with milk and honey, a promised land where no one had been able to see a paradise before. And the other is the artist for all the ages, Pablo Picasso. A young boy growing up in Spain at the end of the 19th century, Pablo Picasso completely revolutionized what is meant by the word art. Over a life that lasted more than 90 years, he sent forth a steady stream of paintings and sculptures and drawings and writings, while marrying and loving many women and fathering numerous children right up to the very end of his non-stop creative existence. Think about the first time you came across a painting by Picasso. If you're truthful about it, you probably have to admit that you just didn't get it. The faces with all those sharp angles and strange colors, and both eyes on one side of the face like some kind of flounder fish that you could catch with worms and lives on the bottom in the sand. But if you went back and looked at his pictures again, you likely started to see how they made a kind of sense. In essence, you were learning from this man to see differently, to understand how there could be two sides to a person's face, for example, that would show up at the same time. This artist had so much confidence in what he saw and was so strong and clear and even generous in showing the rest of the world what he saw that he taught everybody to see the old world in a new way. And because of his confidence, we can all become a little more confident ourselves and learn not to reject new things out of hand just because we can't recognize them at first. I said that Picasso was generous because he made a lot of art, but he also made a lot of money, because the confidence he felt in his art translated into confidence in art dealers, and confidence on the part of the art buyer's market and the auction market, which in turn translated into confidence on the part of large corporations and super-rich investors in the lasting value of Pablo Picasso's vision of the world. It's not uncommon to stand in a museum and listen to other people say things about modern art like, "My kid could do better," or "What's the big deal?" or "I don't get it." And you know, a lot of stuff that's passed off as art deserves these kinds of remarks. In that sense, the art market is a big confidence game. But the amazing thing is the confidence game can only be played because there's such a thing as real art that has lasting value. And everybody hopes that the thing they're standing in front of might fit that bill. And when the artist is real, like Picasso is real, his signature is as good as the U.S. Mint. And even a little drawing can be cashed in for many, many dollar bills. It's hard to think about political and religious leaders like Brigham Young as having something basic in common with great artists like Pablo Picasso, but they are inspirers of vision and confidence in the people who follow them. Brigham Young, at least, was even able to look at the landscape of the United States of America, at the barren deserts of what is now the prosperous state of Utah, and see that the cactus and alkali flats held the promised land. The Great Salt Lake, just like the Dead Sea in the state of Israel, was in fact the land of milk and honey. The Mormons, those people Brigham Young led from western New York State all the way to Salt Lake City, where they built their tabernacle, were most universally feared and hated and despised. They were lynched and beaten and denied the right to practice their religion openly. Their religion, which came to their prophet Joseph Smith in his home in Rochester, New York, compelled them to seek peace, to seek a place on this continent where they could live in harmony among themselves and with none to persecute them. So they set out, suffering all the way, despised by all, and battered by the elements. Joseph Smith, the prophet, had died, and it fell to Brigham Young to be their Moses and lead them. He led them with vision, with confidence in the power of justice and the rightness of their cause. He couldn't offer immediate reward or money, or the kind of power that comes from controlling industries or markets, but he did offer each and every person who marched with him the power of self-respect and self-command, the power of right to win out over wrong, the power of justice over law, and the power of confidence over the forces of ignorance. In fact, if you travel to Salt Lake City today, you see a prosperous, modern metropolis. Travel to any major city in this country, and you'll find a skyscraper built and owned by the Church of the Latter-day Saints, those same Mormons who settled in a desert valley with nothing but the little they carried with them, and their faith. So all the outward attributes of inner confidence flowed to them, because their confidence was real and enduring. Brigham Young's was a kind of politics that deals in the way we feel about ourselves and about others, and how we treat others and expect them to treat us. And while you may not agree with the Mormons' religious philosophy, you have to respect the dedication that led them to their present condition. They followed the politics of trust, the confidence we talked about earlier when we talked about the economy. The other kind of politics as usual, which has to do with awarding contracts and building roads and dams and supplying essential services, can only function when the government has the trust and respect of the citizens. It's hard to say which is the chicken and which is the egg here, but without people helping each other, you can't even make scrambled eggs, much less have a chicken in every pot. All right, you say, all this history makes a fine story. I'm convinced. I want in. But I don't have the strength of George Washington, the faith of Brigham Young, the imagination of Pablo Picasso. Heck, I don't even have a law degree or good connections in the county highway department. How can I achieve this level of belief in myself? I think I can give some very specific answers to your question. Because if you've heard me this far and want to know more, it means I've earned your confidence. And remember, you can't inspire confidence or feel confident in yourself if you can't feel confidence in others. So in a real sense, the first important step has already been taken, and you're already on your way to a new world of confidence. If only we venture just a little further down this path we are standing on, looking ahead together. There are 3 areas which we have to talk about before you're ready to add confidence to the other building blocks of your unshakable character. Those 3 are, first, developing the quality of inspiring confidence by uncovering your own confidence in who you are and how you were raised. Second, seeing how you can derive confidence from that formal education and training you've received and the characteristics of your teachers and mentors. And third, drawing confidence from the challenges and experiences you've had in all areas of your life and the success you've had in dealing with them. Let's look at each one of these areas one by one. First, to grow up at all means that you have certain kinds of vital equipment that are necessary to survive in this tough, technical, highly developed world of ours. Your parents taught you basic skills, how to walk, how to eat, and later feed yourself, and what to eat, and perhaps good manners. You were given a certain amount of physical strength and mental endowments. Maybe you aren't a rocket scientist, but maybe you know how to fix a lawnmower, something many rocket scientists cannot do. Maybe you don't have a degree in accounting, but you can tell a joke so well that a whole room will roar with laughter. What are your strong points? They have to be there or you wouldn't have made it this far. Maybe you can save money. Maybe you know how to find things like somebody's lost contact lenses. Chances are you not only have a personal strength, a gift or talent or real ability that should be a source of pride and give you real confidence, but it's something you take so for granted that you don't realize what it's worth. We're not talking about what's difficult for you, but about what comes easy. Just because it's easy for you to cut through with a cross-cut saw doesn't mean that it's easy for everybody. Your talent and skill is what you take for granted and maybe don't value enough. Talent isn't hard work. It's what's a snap. Second, if you grew up in this country, you attended school and more than likely have a high school education. Here's another case of almost everybody's got it, and I've got it, so why should I take confidence in my diploma? First of all, not everybody's got that diploma. And second of all, this is one of the few countries in the world where almost everyone can read and write and do math. So we take for granted something that in the backwoods of nowhere would probably qualify you to be president or the king or the big boss. So, boss, don't sell that sheepskin short because you do have it. You wouldn't think of it as nothing if you didn't have one. Also your teachers, your mentors, who showed you the ropes at the first job or at the new place, they saw something in you that you maybe didn't see yourself. Want to know what that something is exactly? Well, if you can pinpoint what they gave you, what they showed you, you will see yourself through the eyes of that other person, that teacher or mentor or newfound friend. Because what they give you is what they see in you already, invisible to yourself. If they didn't see that you were capable of running that machine, taking that order, landing that account, making that sale just as they were capable, then they wouldn't bother to teach you in the first place. They had confidence in abilities that you may not have known you had. And they shared that confidence with you because you already had the skill. You only needed the sharing. Third and lastly, and even more important than where you were born and who your parents are, and whether or not you went to any school or the right school, and whether or not anyone stood by you or showed you the ropes, you have lived, and you are here. So you have the richest bank to draw upon that there is. You have experience. You may have traveled around the world. You may have known many people and learned the ways of other lands and other languages. Or you may have experienced life in the same place among people you've known all your life and known them in a way that no one on the move, forever dealing with new faces and new friends, can ever know another person. That's your bankroll. That's where you can learn and draw from with confidence. Because the thing about experience is, it really works. If it didn't, you wouldn't be here. You'd be dead and not caring. And I'm sure that you have some confidence in life because here you are listening to me talk and maybe even getting that sympathetic vibration, which is the confident tone that sounds in all of us. The confident man or woman is someone we all admire, someone we all want to emulate, and rightly so. The confidence man, on the other hand, is something quite different. A colleague of mine had been approached by a stranger with a highly attractive, apparently very lucrative business proposition while on a business lunch in the Wall Street area. This out-of-the-blue proposal had all the marks of bona fide. Letterhead, seed capital, articles of incorporation, a board of advisors. In the years before he became someone my friend did business with, the man making the proposition had been active in the government operations overseas in some capacity that none of his current associates could actually explain. This former public servant intimated that the opportunity involved buying shares in a corporation set up to import and export fresh fruits and vegetables from Central and South America outside the North American growing season. Apples in April, plums in December, lettuce in February. However, under the cover of these fruits and vegetables, they would actually be selling weapons to both sides of a civil war in a medium-sized Latin American quasi-democracy, which was and is against the law and would be hard to account for if you had a chance to win big. My friend slipped away from his lunch table and placed one phone call to a man who would know. Sure enough, this very individual had been accepting investments from wealthy individuals all over the country without ever showing his books. Furthermore, so the plan ran, investors would be invited to inspect the foreign warehouses where their goods were stored and then held for sizable ransom from their families, friends, and business associates. Can you imagine what kind of person would attempt to play such a trick on someone who knows his way around? So much for one of the few real confidence men that still operate out of a restaurant. You've got to learn to crawl before you can walk, and walk before you can run. Nobody grows to be an adult in this day and age without the leap of faith, the act of confidence which says, I have the equipment to walk among people. I have the goodwill and the sharp eye to do well and to do more than just survive. And I assure you that when you sense confidence in others, you are sensing your own strength. And if they sense that confidence that you have in yourself, they can do nothing to harm you. What others have, you also have. But what others may lack, you don't have to do without. And you can be absolutely confident of that. What is good health? Is it a matter of opinion or a matter of fact? Is it a style? Or is it rather the substance of what we are as human beings? Is it the condition of the physical plant, if we think of ourselves as flesh and blood machines? Or the state of our emotional being, if we think of ourselves as more thought than matter? And in what sense is it an element of strong character? Because you thought health was all about the body, didn't you? A very wise old lady once told me, if you have your health, you have everything. Lose your health, and there isn't enough money in all the world to make life good, or to make you feel like life is worth living. I didn't completely believe her when she attempted to give me the benefit of her long experience. After all, I was just a boy. Like most young people today, I thought that feeling good and having all the parts of my body in good working order was something that came with the territory. Like everything else, it just seemed to happen by itself almost every day of the year. I could take it for granted, and I did. But at the point in life I'm at now, there have been times when I've been sick, and there have been times when I wondered what would happen if I were to lose my health. Would that be a test of character? I certainly think it would. It's a test of character when you get the flu over a weekend and you want to just lie there and complain, but instead you lie there and quietly watch television. Or at least it seems to be a test of character until it's over and you forget about it. But something like that, a minor illness, is really more like a tap on the shoulder than a test of character. You feel the little tap, you look around and nothing is there. Whatever it was is gone already. But sooner or later it will be back, and someday there will be more than a little tap on the shoulder. And someday you'll look around and whatever it is won't be gone yet, not by a long shot. It tests your character a little just to think about that, doesn't it? But I'm not trying to scare anybody, I'm just trying to dramatize a point. You know the kind of life you live when you're a kid. You can eat anything, and you do. If you drink beer on the tailgate of your buddy's station wagon on the night of the high school football game, you can drink as much as you want. Maybe more than you want, in fact. In college, you stay up for all-night cram sessions fueled by coffee and donuts, the radio, and perhaps cigarettes, unfiltered ones, at least in my day. Looking back on it now, it all makes sense. You're feeling yourself getting bigger and stronger every day, and that's the only real evidence you've got to go on, so why not just go for it? After all, it hasn't hurt you so far. Of course, the reality isn't quite that simple. But it's not as simple either as thinking that just because you're older, things are now going in the opposite direction. And that while you used to want to do everything, you should now want to do nothing. No, reality is by no means that simple either. There's a saying that I heard in church about the same time that wise old lady told me that when you have your health, you have everything. and it took me just about as long to understand that saying as it did to figure out what good health really means to people. That saying was, you have to lose your life in order to find it. You have to lose one way of living in order to find a different one that's better suited to who you are at this particular time. But you can do that, though it takes character. You have to lose your life in order to find it, but you can lose your life and you can find a new one. I've been very fortunate. I feel good. I'm okay. But it's not like when you were a kid anymore. It's not like when you're sure you'll win any fast and loose betting game you decide to play with your body. I've had some insights by this time. I've never really been sick, but it's dawned on me by now that good health is more than just the absence of illness. It's more than just not being sick. Good health is the direct result of right thinking and right living. In other words, of strong character. A buddy told me about his old football coach, who always used to tell the boys on the team that the most important thing they could do for themselves as a team playing football and as individuals playing the game of life was to develop what he referred to as a healthy attitude. Sure, they had to do push-ups, they had to tackle a dummy and push the blocking sled, but if they didn't do it with a healthy attitude, then as far as this old coach was concerned, they were just so much dead weight, pushing around just so much more dead weight. Well, they were young and strong, but you know, what church and that wise old lady couldn't make me understand, I first began to think about a little when I heard about that old coach's emphasis on having a healthy attitude. It was different from just a strong body. It had something to do with that, but it had something to do with character as well. A healthy attitude. That's like knowing that in order to go from point A to point B, you have to walk a straight line and not veer away or get distracted by things that might seem pleasant for a moment, but really don't contribute to your well-being. Or, as the coach might have said, to the good of the team that's depending on you. You've got to go straight up and down the field. You can't go sideways, just because the hot dogs and soda pop are over there, to say nothing of the cheerleaders. That sort of distraction is for after the game, if ever. And not being able to keep to the task is unhealthy thinking, and bad attitude, and weak character. I used to think all that was cornball stuff. Now I still think it's cornball, but also important and even true. Your attitude, the slant you put on things, the way you lean into life or back away from it, is all part of your character. And if you're in life for the long run, you're going to need strength and endurance for that, which also derives in part from your character, at least when you get past the age of 17 or 18. In order to live a long time and to be well throughout, you have to be an athlete of health, a real long-distance runner. And anybody who's ever even just watched the Olympics on television knows that character is an important part of running. So while health may never have seemed like a quality of character to you, I hope you're starting to see that it truly is one. It's hard to think clearly, to feel confident and strong and decisive and wise if you're short of breath when you stand up after a long spell of sitting down in a chair, to cite an extreme example, and to cite some examples that are less extreme. How can you hope to make the right decisions about where to go with your career, about what to buy and what to sell, about approaching that new client, or about calling on that old friend, if your pants are too tight, or if the middle button keeps popping open on the jacket of your business suit? But here's the good news. I say you don't have to believe every scare story that comes over the news and television telling you not to eat this or that because of what statistics say has happened in X number of cases. You don't have to make yourself crazy because of what too much of something tasty or greasy or sweet does to laboratory rats. Because you don't have to become a health fanatic to understand that some things, in big amounts, really aren't good for you. It was a Greek philosopher of the classic age who said that we should all do all things in moderation and nothing in excess. That's a principle you should definitely apply to your lifestyle. It can't hurt to have an ice cream cone every now and then, a little sweet to reward you for a job well done, a little something to take the sour taste out of your mouth on a bad day, but don't go gobbling ice cream by the quart and following that up with a pack of cigarettes and a fifth of rye whiskey. There are people who do just that, but it's a one-way ticket to the wrecker's yard. So is driving yourself crazy about health, however. So remember the principle, moderation in all things, nothing to excess. Worry and stress are as bad for your heart as a high cholesterol count. That's been proven pretty convincingly, especially by a long-term study in Finland, in which two groups of men were asked to follow very different diets over a period of years. The first group could eat and drink anything they wanted, let the chips fall where they may. The second group was watched closely. Everything they ate was recorded and evaluated. No eggs, butter, or cheese, no coffee, just herbal tea. No meat, but macrobiotic pasta was permissible. Which group had the more casualties? You make the call. What's worse is to have a high cholesterol count and always be worrying about it, and punishing yourself for it with a sheet of strict Puritan rules. It's much easier to just follow moderation in all things. That way, health really is a function of character rather than the calculator. Yes, go easy on the food and drink. Go easy on the rules, too. Take, for example, the man who was a real fitness nut, even before it was really popular. Every day he did his free weight workout, and then he ran 5 miles. Every day he ate the right foods, every day for 25 years. From the time he was 18 until he was 43, he drank a glass of carrot juice and watched the nightly business report on his exercycle. That was where he died of a heart attack at 43. There's also the experience of a wealthy woman who became a follower of a man who preached long life and perfect health through diet. She gave him large amounts of money and faithfully adhered to all his food-related instructions until he died, and at an early age. She never would allow his name to be mentioned in her presence again. That may be why I've forgotten his name, although not the poetic justice of his passing on. A doctor friend of mine, a cardiologist, a man of good judgment, who is very unlikely to be swayed by fads and fashions in health care or anything else, explained it all to me this way. You have to understand who you are and how you are made. In other words, you have to understand your character, physical, mental, and emotional. Not everybody is made to run a marathon or climb mountains or play defensive tackle for the Chicago Bears. Not everybody's got the physical or mental equipment to be a truck driver or a rocket scientist or a traveling salesman. Each of these people is used to different levels of activity. They live in worlds with different customs, different ways of training and thinking, and oh yes, different ways of celebrating. A rocket scientist doesn't need to do 20 miles of road work every day. A truck driver doesn't need to sit still and read the small print under a lamp for hours at a stretch. A football player doesn't have to stay up all night driving through heavy downpours on the vast stretches of the Midwest interstate. Each taxes his body in different ways, and each needs to eat and relax in different ways, too. One person might be able to smoke cigars or a pipe or cigarettes in moderate amount, where another man would fall ill from even casual light indulgence in tobacco. One man can hold his liquor while another can't keep it down. Some people can run 4 hours, but they can't sit still. Whatever the particulars of your physical constitution, and whatever the current condition of your character, there's one thing I can say immediately and with complete assurance. If you've let yourself get seriously out of shape, and if you're engaging in behaviors that are blatantly self-destructive, you're going to find it very difficult to respect yourself, and you're going to make it nearly impossible for others to respect you. This is just a fact of life in today's world and in today's system of values. Recently, I saw an obviously wealthy man pull up at the entrance of his country club in a limousine. He needed 2 flunkies to pry him out of the car. Even the valet parkers exchanged smirking glances. Unfortunately, this man was born in the wrong century, because even I, who enjoy steak and potatoes as much as anyone, could see he was making some bad choices from the menu and probably elsewhere as well. If you want success, if you want to lead, and you wouldn't be listening to me now if you were anything less than a success-oriented individual whose ambitions are not going to be held back by the hand that fate has dealt him or the place that fortune finds him, you must embrace the received lifestyle of the times. The President of the United States goes jogging most every day because he must lead a country on the run, and because he understands that people today will not tolerate a tired-out man at the top. That's just how it is, and no one person on earth is going to change the way things are at this moment right now. Times do change, and people at the top change with them, of course, but that's with the times, not against the times, not ahead of the times, not behind them. Being in good physical shape is a big part of good health as we see it now. There was a famous woman in the world of fashion who said that you can't be too rich or too thin. That was 20 years ago. And now it may be you still can't be too rich, but the other part of the saying would now have to be or have too much muscle definition. I could be wrong about this, though. I base my informal research on what the most popular film actresses looked like in any given year. A young woman of my acquaintance was close to 30, and, well, a bit of a marshmallow. She smoked a little, ate what she pleased, and never gave too much thought to her looks, which she was losing, or her health, because she still had it. Then one day the doctors told this young mother of 2 that she had a heart condition. She was informed that she would have to take pills for the rest of her life and never exert herself again. No strenuous sports, no excitement, no unnecessary stress. Though she was not even at the beginning of middle age, she was being sentenced to a spectator's seat at the games of life. She thought about what the doctors told her for a few days, looked at her children and husband and friends, and decided that enough was enough. Just what was it supposed to mean to be alive? She threw away those pills. She changed her diet. She started lifting weights and took long, vigorous walks in the morning. She toned up. She bought a new wardrobe and joined the workforce. 5 years after she was told by medical science that her active life was over, this picture of health now enjoys a successful, executive-level career in the burgeoning and fast-moving field of computers and information science. Good health can only raise your esteem, your standing and respect in the eyes of other people. Good health may give your character and ambition every advantage and put you in the way of the good things in life that come along. But all these things do not exhaust the benefits of good health. Despite the great and certain worldly rewards for staying healthy and fit, they are not the sole or even the main reason to seek and embrace the habits of good health. If I can be allowed a moment of philosophical reflection, the greatest benefits to health are found in the mind and spirit and soul of the seeker. Hold on a minute, you're thinking. Are you going to go fuzzy and mystical on us? No. I'm here to talk sense, not preach or push vitamins. And in fact, if there were one formula, one answer to the question of what is the true path to good health, if I knew what that answer was, I would hold the key to the most vexing problem of the ages. And this program would be the basis of a religion, not a practical guide to building strong character and achieving success. Good health may really be an effect of character as much as a cause of it. In my opinion, being a person of strong character is the best prescription for a sound mind and a sound body. If you feel good about yourself, you'll naturally want to take care of your body. But if you lose respect for your body, you're more likely to become slipshod in other areas too. Old people are probably the strongest people in the world because if they weren't, they wouldn't have lived so long. What do old people who are healthy, who still get out and do things and live life, what do they talk about when they get together? They talk about who's had what operation, of course, and how the bridge club went last week, and what new shows and movies are worth seeing, and who they saw at the golf course. But once the chit-chat dies away, they talk about food, and they talk about their digestive systems. When it comes to digestion, there are certain foods that help the plumbing work smoothly, but those foods alone don't make for a healthy and balanced diet. You need variety in your diet in order to fulfill your body's many nutritional needs, and it's likewise very beneficial and important to have variety in your life. What's true of financial health is also true of physical well-being. If you keep doing exactly what you've been doing, you'll keep having exactly what you have. Anybody who does the same thing every day, year in and year out, with no break or vacation, is probably in no position to even know whether he or she is in good shape. As we discussed earlier, you can't know what you have until you leave it, or lose it, or get something else. Probably the easiest and most healthful way to break up your day and keep the biological clock wound up so that it doesn't run down in the middle of the best days of your life, and that's today, is to catch a nap whenever the opportunity presents itself. But I stopped taking naps when I graduated from kindergarten, you may object. And I ask you, have you been better off because of that? What does every chief executive officer of any major corporation have in the office? Right there across from the big desk with its leather-upholstered tilted-back swivel chair. A couch. And what do you suppose that couch is for? It's to have a little snooze before addressing the board about the latest attempt at a hostile takeover or the upcoming stockholders' meeting. Remember, every dream is a vacation, and it was Shakespeare himself who said that sleep knits up the raveled sleeve of care. John Kennedy kept to his scheduled naps even during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. Did this save the world from nuclear catastrophe? Well, something saved it. There's a saying that comes down to us from classical times. It's in Latin, of course. Mens sano in corpore sano. What does it mean? Well, word for word, it means a healthy mind in a healthy body. That's the ancient Roman prescription for living the good life, smart life, and feeling good and smart about yourself. You just can't sharpen your mind like a pencil so it comes to a fine point, but always gets shorter and shorter until it's worn down to a stub and has to be discarded. Neither can you just eat and drink and party and fight without a thought in the world. Or so the Romans believed during their glory days, and I agree with that line of thinking. Later, in the declining days of the empire, the Romans forgot their own advice, and soon the decline became a fall. I'm sure the message is clear. For centuries, The people of China have absorbed wave upon wave of conquering barbarians into the vast reaches of their country. Always the invaders seize control of the government. But then a curious thing happens, and has happened every time to the conquering hordes. After a few years of rule, the Chinese don't become barbarians, but the barbarians become Chinese. Part of the reason for this ability of the Chinese people to swallow up and digest the armies that would rule them has to do with the country being so large and so old. And part of it has to do with the philosophy and practical wisdom of this mighty nation, which has for many thousands of years made a science of good health and long life. It's the national character, you might say. One form of the martial arts that centers on self-defense, an art called Tai Chi, combines physical exercises with philosophy and diet. It teaches a person to defend himself or herself from all kinds of attacks from hostile people, using weapons or surprise or brute strength, attacks from within the physical body in the form of disease, and even attacks in the form of destructive emotions like anger or fear. Character and chemistry are both taken into account. I'm not going mystical on you. I'm just following my philosophy of learning things wherever I can. I've heard of a very old Chinese man who lived an odd but astonishing long life. He ate very little, exercised regularly, and kept a turtle in his bathtub. The turtle, he explained, was a symbol of longevity, and it gave him an example to follow in his dealing with the world. Slow and steady, and it supplied a certain kind of undemanding companionship in what must have been at times a lonely life. There's much more to be said about health, but there are few hard and fast conclusions to be reached. I think health is an aspect of character, because I see evidence that ethical people are happier and more relaxed. Stress, on the other hand, which I associate with hostility and anger, is said to cause physical problems. But maybe this is just wishful thinking, that people get what they really deserve. I happen to believe they do get what they deserve, however, or perhaps they get even a little bit more.